Pull up my website real quick. So the next section, I think it's pretty clear. This is the incident where, with the girl, you describe it in a lot of detail. So I think it's pretty clear what happens to them.
In my home.
This is where you go to the store with her. Yeah. It's your friend's friend. So we don't have to elaborate on that. I think it's pretty much.
Basically, what happened, it was an acquaintance that I met, used to hang around in the studios that we were at. I became intimate with one of her friends, and just so that night, the friend wasn't around, she wanted to hang out, so I just happened to stop by the studio, check on my guys. We were actually shooting a compilation there. And went on a store run. She came with me. My mom was out of town. My friend in Vegas. I stopped by.
You stopped by your mom's house?
I stopped by the house on the way back from the store. We stopped, stayed up a little bit. I did a little bit of cleaning up. One thing led to another, but I didn't know that this individual had made a phone call to these other guys. Supposedly, basically, come set me up to rob me. I didn't find out all this until later on, actually years later, how it all worked out, transpired. But to make a long story short, that individual's boyfriend's brother was an Inglewood police officer. She ended up staying out at my house with me a little bit longer than she was supposed to, I guess. Went back, made up this elaborate story that I wouldn't let her leave, which wasn't true. And then the boyfriend's brother basically pushed it to a higher level, took it to a sergeant, and they ended up charging me for assault. Which I was basically facing life in prison for, and I had never been in prison my whole life. I basically fought life for about a year, and then they tried to offer me a deal for 16 years. I think something like that. I was like, that's no deal. So I was innocent, so I figured, if I went to trial, then everything would be fine. And boy, was I wrong. So I went to trial, and the jury ended up convicting me, even though the victim stated on the stand that there was that I didn't try to penetrate her, or there was no sexual encounter. She actually stated there on the stand, but the district attorney portrayed me as a producer who basically got everything that he wanted, and this is something that I wanted, and I went through an elaborate scheme to set up this whole thing. And basically the jury, they deliberated for about 3 days, but they ended up coming back and convicting me. And I still remember it looked like one of the jurors wanted to cry when they read the verdict. I don't think she really wanted to rule that way, but they did. So I was off to prison, state prison the first time.
And just before this, you had gotten charged for automatic weapon possession.
Yeah, after what happened at the club, I had security guards, and of course, my guards were armed. Well, there was an automatic weapon that was found in one of my briefcases, and making a long story short, I was charged with that. So I think the cops took this perfect opportunity, went to trial with that.
Two separate trials.
When I went to trial with that and I lost, they hit me with the other case.
With the automatic weapons case?
They had already, when I lost the automatic weapons case, that's when they hit me with the assault case against the female.
Okay. There's a little bit of a gap, and then you talk about the riot. How long did you end up spending?
sentence was actually partially reversed on appeal. Took me approximately 2.5 years to get the appeal through to the point to where it allowed me to come home. It didn't completely overturn all my charges. What the Court of Appeals found that there was no force, there was no penetration, there was no felony force for me trying to keep the individual in my residence, and they changed the charges from felony false imprisonment to I think simple false imprisonment or something like that. But they never completely overturned the rest of the charges. But it was just enough to let me come home. So I came home a little bit less than 3 years later.
Great. You talk a little bit about the politics of prison and the way that it worked, the appeal. And then pretty much go straight into talking about PortalVia, which I think is the next transition into the next stage of life.
Yeah, it's just now starting to come 360. The reason why it's starting to come back is because, as I mentioned earlier, I left it. It took a lot out of me. Music was my first love. My cousin said it was my only love, and I let it go. But like I said, after Pac got killed, man, a lot of things changed.
After who?
Tupac.
Oh.
And Biggie Smalls, and whole thing, whole fiasco with all that, man. Just really, and then like I said, I wasn't getting paid for a lot of tracks that were getting stolen. And I was a little disappointed, a little upset. So I always knew too, I could always rely back on my experience, my military expertise and my computer. So I left it. And I always said if it was meant to be, then it'd come back 360. So when I founded PortalVia, by it being a communications infrastructure and me creating the TriplePlay, which is internet, TV, and phone, of course, by its natural characteristics, it's a media head, basically. So with the capabilities to digitize analog signals, TV programming, what have you, video, it made perfect sense. So not only did I have this communications infrastructure, I also had this media element that was just laying there waiting to be utilized. And why not leverage my industry colleagues?
Sure.
So I reached out to Rick Freeman, brought him back in as my CTO, who was also the vice president for DJ Pooh. And brought Pooh in hopefully to solidify and bring in some other content. And so I reached out to Corrupt and some of the other guys from my other industry colleagues to bring in content, because in the media or broadcast industry, content is key. So that's how that sort of came about. So I'm not necessarily in the trenches of the studios and stuff like I used to be, producing the tracks and landing tracks and recording the musical artists. My role now is as the network executive, to where the individuals who need the alternative distribution and exposure, I have that network for them. Like we have capabilities to create their own independent channel, or allow them to upload their content to our website for distribution exposure via Icon or
Right.
VOD.
Could you talk a little bit about starting TriplePlay, PortalVia, like the whole process? You can be brief, but just give me a little bit of background of coming out of prison and what led you to do that. And you talk a little bit here about your background as an RF engineer, I think, in the Air Force, and how that kind of even set you up with the skills and knowledge to do that.
Yeah, I'll first and foremost, to my creator, Lord Savior, for just allowing me to regain my freedom. Second, I owe it to the United States Air Force, because without that expertise, I wouldn't have been able to prove the government agencies and individuals who were so desperately trying to basically throw me away for life for something I didn't do. So, with that being said, the capabilities that was taught to me by the United States Air Force, the best, allowed me to be able to see the future of telecom and communications, seeing that everything was converting over to digital, which meant it's converting over to IP, which means it can be transmitted via RF, wireless. Now my expertise, of course, is satellite. I'm a SATCOM specialist, senior RF engineer, classified by NASA, by a job that I didn't get, but I applied for it, but that's where I got my classification from. It gave me the basis and expertise to understand the modulation, different modulation schemes, the compression schemes, the difference between different frequencies and makeups, how satellites are 23,000 miles above the geohemisphere, how it takes 3 of them to cover a global, but at the same time knowing their inherent weaknesses. So by knowing their inherent weaknesses and their capabilities, it allowed me to basically formulate a plan, which was the basis for delivery of the triple play utility, which is internet, TV, and phone, but all via IP, internet protocol, all digital, ones and zeros. Once you convert analog, which is like we're speaking, into digital ones and zeros, it can be transmitted or communicated via a network infrastructure, just like regular computer data. Computer data, the internet, is already ones and zeros, and the last threshold to hurdle was the programming side, which encompasses encoding basically colors, because every picture frame is made up of millions of pixels.
Right.
It used to be several hundred thousand pixels, but each one of those pixels had an actual geographic identification, which was numerically equated to a digital code. So once you had that element, then you could sort of piece together the transformation of the actual pictures to the digital element. And once I heard my instructor relate that to me in class in the Air Force, I was like, ding, 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 the bells and whistles went up, as well as the dollar signs. So I jotted down a few notes, and I didn't say anything to anybody. And then I came home from the Air Force. I just sort of locked it away as my little secret weapon, waiting for the time to be, and hoping that the entertainment industry, my boys who were already, while I was gone, made their way into the music industry, the rap industry, would bring me into the circle, and then I was going to expose them to this other level where, hey, we don't need those guys anymore. We already got our digital.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen that way. So
why not? They weren't ready for that?
That's a good question. I don't know, man. Some people said they don't want to see me in that position, that specific position. Some people said that guys don't have the vision or the forethought that I did. And my CTO says the rest of the guys are ambulance chasers. They wait for you to move the mountain, and then once they see the ship is taking off, then they try to strap onto it. So, I don't know. And then another thing could be, networking and exposure. You could have the best, I like to put it like this, you could have the military could build the best bomb in the world, but if you don't have a plan to drop it on, it's useless. So, in other words, I can have the best idea in the world, but if no one knows about me, then it's useless. So hopefully that's something that maybe you could help me with.
Yeah, okay.